That's really good. So Joe, let's maybe turn our focus now and look at DTC compared to conventional load balancer. Scott, can you walk us through this?
Yeah, and Bob, it's it's a great story that we have where I mentioned, potentially not having to have all these different tiers of application, whether it's global load balancing and server load balancing, and in a lot of scenarios, if you're using a load balancer, you've got a DNS query happening when you're trying to get to some application, and then once the DNS response happens, then the client talks to the load balancer, and then the load balancer has to check the health of the servers to make sure they're available, and then that load balancer finally responds back to the client. So you've kind of got this approach of, well, I got to send it here, and then I got to send it there, but it's doing a lot of the same stuff and a lot of the same functionality. Whereas, and then finally, once the guy talks to the load balancer, then the connection then has to go to the resource pool to get to that application. And it's a lot of steps, and it's extra latency, and then in this scenario, the DNS doesn't really know what's happening on the server side because there's no correlation there between the two. Whereas with a DTC type solution, you're able to eliminate a few of those tiers and say, well, I need to get to some applications, so I'm going to talk to the Infoblox, and it's checking the state of the health of those servers, and then sending back to Mr. User that, oh, you need to go to server server 2 or .1 on the right there, and we send that connection across, and then it responds back. So we've reduced the number of connections, we've reduced the latency, we've made things, made the application faster and more globally aware. And one of the things that Joe mentioned was using all the topology rules and all the information in the IPAM database. So being able to make intelligent decisions and help speed the application up is kind of the important thing here. So we kind of a little bit about the setup, and I'm going to show it in a demo, so I'm going to kind of go through this kind of quick, but you've got a pool of collection of servers. You could have, single pool scenario with one application. You can have multiple pools in different locations, different data centers, and sort of decide how you want to have connections go to which servers and which pools. And I'll show you the way mine is set up with a active and sort of standby design. Also being able to, Joe mentioned global availability or awareness of these requests, and being able to respond to content based on where the user is. So Joe mentioned the GDPR, right? So in Europe, right, they have to have certain certain servers they have to talk to for compliance regulations. So being able to understand where users are is pretty important to a lot of folks. And finally, I'll let Joe kind of jump in and talk a little bit about our reporting.
Yeah, sure, thanks, Scott. So yeah, I mean, as far as reporting goes, now I'm not going to go into detail on this particular report. It's a little bit difficult to see. It's a bit blurry. But the idea behind our reporting in general is that we do have a wonderful reporting solution that, when integrated with the grid, can provide all kinds of information, whether it's trend analysis reports, whether it's specific reports on individual DNS servers, or in this case, specific to DTC, right? So for example, this particular report is going to show us, show us things like, well, how is the DTC response been responding over time? So what servers have we been directing traffic to? So it's a great way to look at things like trend analysis, or being able to use it as a wonderful debugging tool, as an example. Now, again, it's important. This particular report is important because we're actually monitoring the response distribution trends for the DTC resources over time. When we talk about how to actually get this, so for Infoblox customers that now we're going to get into a little bit more detail toward the end how to get our hands on it, but it's part of the reporting solution. For those that have used reporting, it's one of our dashboards. And again, this particular one does pinpoint, the actual trend analysis, right? So again, reporting is a wonderful tool to add to any grid.